To be honest, I don't know how to charge this without shooting it.
And I fell. Bounties. But he's dead for right now, so he's gonna leave us alone now.
Alright, well, if I kill you, it's not my fault.
I don't believe that for a minute.
Oh, my armistice zone privileges are revoked.
No, it looked like I got hit by my own ship when I was getting out of the seat.
Another NPC. Yep, he's dead. Oh, no, he ran away. Welcome, everybody. I'm DarkR717, and we are doing our 5th episode of State of the Verse, where we go over the latest and greatest news and information for the Star Citizen universe. Everything from Star Citizen Live, including Inside Star Citizen, Roadmap Roundup, and any other pertinent news that has come out over the past week. And this week, it is actually just myself and J-Scale bringing you the news this time, and no guests today, but still a lot of stuff to go over. What's going on, J-Scale?
Good morning. I'm getting excited for 315.
As I think everybody is. Yep, I am definitely ready for 315. We all know that it's in testing prior to going to Evocity. I haven't heard anything new on the new Evocity people that they've been trying to recruit, and I know they were working on that purge of the old ones, so hopefully we may get some news on that here soon as far as when that's going to hit the Evocity.
I heard that invites to new members have been going out, but I haven't heard any more than that.
Yeah, I know I'm not getting invited, so
Same.
be nice, but I don't know if I'd really want to play that first iteration. I think with PTU Wave 1, you get in at a time where they're still trying to flesh out some problems, but it's not to the point where it may just drive you crazy and not want to get on.
If I had the time, I'd love to do it for 315. I don't know about being a regular at it though.
Yeah, if I did it for 315, just be used to the fact that I'm going to die a lot.
That's the time to do it.
Oh, yeah, very true. Lose everything up front and at the beginning before I have to, accept the fact I'm going to be poor in the verse for dying too many times. Still want my robotic arms, though, damn it.
That's what I was going to say, a legless bum sitting there handling for AUEC.
Just hopping around on my stumps. So this week, actually, we saw on Tuesday, Xenothreat came to an end, and we'll go over the AMA that they had on the recap of the dynamic events and all that. Definitely some interesting information in there. We actually, as an org, we went in every day pretty much to do Xenothreat. Got the rewards, so that was nice to see, and it's what's expected. I mean, we knew what the rewards were going to be. Nothing really super flashy or anything, but they did get them handed out, which was nice to see them end up in our inventories. But after that, overall experience with Xenothreat, it had some issues, and they talk about that in the recap. And the issues that they had, they thought they worked out. It didn't exactly work out perfectly, and there's still some more analyzing of the data that they got to go through to find out what the causes were. But overall, I think even with the bugs I had a great time in it.
I didn't play. Like I think I burned myself out in the PTU because I was in there almost every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can definitely do that, especially going between the PTU and then over to live and just getting back into it again. And PTU was pretty buggy. And a lot of it did carry over, but they did get some of it fixed.
I still out of the two dynamic events that we have, I enjoy doing Xenothreat, even though there is a lot of repetition to it. It's I guess there's enough to it that I enjoy going through it. So
yeah, I did enjoy Xenothreat much more than Ninetales. I was highly disappointed in Ninetales, but there are some big differences between the two events, which they cover in the recap. and how they're supposed to run and how often and everything. So we'll get into that with the recap. Of course, we had no Star Citizen Live this week due to CitizenCon. They had some scheduling conflicts and completion conflicts to be able to get the Star Citizen Live out. So we did not see anything from that. But we do have the Ship Showdown going this time period around now. And we have had several battles actually take place. And we have some results. Of course, the C2 Hercules beat out the Drake Caterpillar. That was pretty much expected there. The new shiny beating out the old, but the Hercules I think is definitely a better ship for cargo hauling. Reclaimer did beat out the Argo Mole, which when I went and voted, the Reclaimer was trailing, so I got really worried about that because I do love that Reclaimer. The Carrack, of course, beat the Andromeda, which that should have been a given. I don't know why those two got kind of put against each other. And our Argo Cargo at this time right now is just whooping the backside off the Freelancer Max. So that has been a very, well, I can't say surprising because I think everybody just loves that little ship. But it's going to have an issue going up against the Carrack.
I think it's going to have a bigger issue going up against the Hercules.
Yeah, if it makes it to that point. And I think the love for the Argo Cargo and just the meme possibilities there should it win the whole thing is its only saving grace to have a chance to make it past the first round or into the past the second round. But I picked one up. Of course, all the Ship Showdown ships are available for sale in the Pledge store right now. They do come with 24-month insurance, and those are going to be going on through the end of the Ship Showdown. And of course, our top 4 winners get the special livery that will be available to all owners. So who knows? We could see a Star Kit and Argo Cargo if it makes it all the way, or some other kind of paint variant.
It'll have gold in it somewhere.
Yeah. Well, before last year, it was like a purple and white. There was no gold in the one before, but that was an entirely new ship. It wasn't just a paint that they gave you. And the gamer tag on it was ridiculous because you'd be flying across, see your buddy in the 2949 Caterpillar Best in Show, and it would say 2949, IAE Best in Show Caterpillar. It took up half your screen.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's kind of nice that they can do it now as a paint, so that you don't have to deal with that. Of course, we got CitizenCon, going on. We're going to see that on October 9th. And I think that kind of leads into kind of what we saw this week is that there's just a very small bit of information that is being released. There, it seems like they're putting the brakes on putting information out there on certain things until after CitizenCon. We know that they're going to have some announcements and such during that. I'm going to be trying to check it out. I know you are as well, Jay Skell.
Yeah, they say often though they're being very selective on what they're giving us now.
Yeah. So, at least they're being honest about it. So, and of course, we saw, we got some information here as far as Roadmap Roundup. We got a lot of different things there that we're going to be going over with the roadmap. The scoreboard UI improvements, that's going to be for Arena Commander and Star Marine. And the bases to be able to keep track of your standings, as well as ranks, scores, kills, and everything like that on a persistent basis. That's going to be interesting. I know there's not a lot of attention that goes into Star Marine. We've gotten in a few times, and it's been a great time. But there's really no ranking system that you can keep track of how you're doing against other people outside of your org. And the same thing with Arena Commander. Right now, Arena Commander is basically a gateway to get the pirate variants or the glaive, things like that. So I think definitely a scoring system will be interesting to have in a leaderboard kind of type system there. Might even bring some more attention to it.
The Pirate Swarm Vandal stuff is in 318.
Yeah, right now they're not overly difficult, and they're talking about rebalancing it, and I think there's definitely a balance issue because I don't know of too many people that can't get through that the first time.
No.
And yes, today is the coffee edition of State of the Verse. We're recording a little bit earlier, so we're still waking up. Usually I have a couple of beers sitting next to me, but today it's coffee. So,
Yeah.
of course, with the roadmap, we also have that's in final review for 315. We got the actor. Of course, with the roadmap, we also have in final review for 315 the actor feature, personal inventory, which we're going to see a lot more information on that on the Inside Star Citizen next week. Of course, this week was the big healing and how to deal with death and different types of injuries. That's on the final review for 315, as well as NPC healing, physical local inventory support, asset manager, and the MobiGlass app, which I think that's that knickknack we've been talking about.
Yep.
And then Doctor Nurse AI behaviors, Cure Life medical tool, which is going to be a step above the med pen, but not quite the med bed in the Cuddy Red. Of course, the Gray Cat multi-tool healing attachment, as well as those scoreboard UI improvements. This week was big on healing and all that stuff. So we'll, as we can see there in that roadmap roundup, with 318 is now a card on there. We're seeing the FPS radar and scanning, which we talked about last week, as well as the EVA tier 2, even though we're getting away from the tier systems. Tier 2 EVA with a little bit more realism with that. Hacking tech, which we saw a few weeks ago with some of the concepts on the hacking stations, and the zero G push and pull. And then they temporarily did remove the cutting tier 2 and the weapon charge and drain tier 0 tech, which I don't know a huge amount on the weapon charge and drain.
It's literally going to be the batteries, I think.
Oh, for the energy weapons.
Yeah, you can yank out the cartridge and put in like your what do you call it? Your DeWalt like battery powered drill. You pull the battery pack out. If I remember correctly, that's what I think that is. But it's been moved a lot. It
Oh yeah.
keeps being pushed out.
Yeah, and it may just be because it's one of those lower priority type things. Obviously we've seen the changes on the weapons on the shipboard side with the drain on the energy weapons and having to be more mindful of your shots and all that. So I definitely think that it would only be natural we'd see that carry over to the hand weapons as well too.
On the healing side, I went back through and I was looking at the different cards for 315 on the release view, and I was trying to figure out, because they're so cryptic in their descriptions, what is it that we're actually getting with this? Are we going to be able to heal each other? Are we going to be able to do it? It wasn't clear from the video. So basically, the NPC healing card, the description on it is that we'll be able to heal other players and NPCs.
Right.
The other gap that I'm looking for is information on is, are there going to be any kind of gameplay loops for this?
Oh, right, for healing missions and things.
Yeah, but they haven't mentioned any of that. So
Well, I will say, as far as gameplay loops, if you're in Amarok's Fang, you can expect that you're going to be doing a lot of running around to come save my ass. So,
I already have the Cuddy Red warmed up.
of course, we talked about the dynamic event AMA recap. This, I don't know. I take this with a grain of salt. There was a lot of great information in there. Some of it, and I think in the recap they even mentioned that they were still in the process of sorting through everything, and this went over covering dynamic events, the Xenothreat, Ninetales, some of what they felt went right, what went wrong, and just questions as far as the future of dynamic events, as well as some questions about Jumptown 2, which I'm excited for that one to get in because I think that's going to be extremely fun. But some of it also seemed very copy and paste. There's one point in the recap where he answers a question, gives a very clear answer, and then you go 3-4 questions down, and they just copy and pasted the exact same answer down, skipped a line, and put one additional sentence in. So I don't know if it was just that they were rushed, or if they were just trying to get something out there, or just didn't feel like putting more detailed information in. Who knows? But as far as the recap, they brought up concerns on trade and commodities and spawn rates, which obviously we all know Ninetales was ridiculous with the commodity spawn rate. I could never find medical supplies to the point we had to pre-stage it and buy them ahead of time.
And I don't know if you're going to cover this. Sorry, I'm going to jump in. But
no, you're fine.
They do go into that whole they had a mod on the stores to
Yep.
increase stock, both sellable and purchasable, but
Mm-hmm.
it was removed in favor of trying to encourage us to go find Rex and
Yep.
get it out of the Rex, which I don't know about you, but the only time I heard of a wreck was late in the Ninetale stuff from one of the other org members, and I don't even know how he found it because there wasn't a whole lot out there.
No, and the one time I did see the Rex, they were way out there. And when we did find the Rex, there were no medical supplies on board. It was just like scrap or slag or whatever they called it. There were no medical supplies to grab. So I don't know if that was supposed to be luck of the draw. You could find one with some, but you weren't supposed to find every single one with the medical supplies you needed. But yeah, those commodities were definitely an issue. And they did mention that those mods they are putting back in for 315, so that should help alleviate that. And
Yeah.
they're also looking at using those mods to also assist with Jumptown, the Jumptown 2, in the fact that your ability to sell items is going to be greatly increased to help cover the the stress of trying to do that event. And I think he put it perfectly when he said, for a good event, it's worth a little economic destabilization if you can get the event to go good, which I think is a good point of view to have.
But in the real world, though, right? That to me, that's what happens. Like when there is a big event, like if if in theory, if we had space stations and that sector of space was basically under conflict for some reason, and it was hard to get goods in and out, it would artificially inflate, at least for a time, supply and demand.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And hopefully, well, they're doing the whole cargo refactor, but hopefully they'll use similar stuff to help with the cargo refactor to make sure that people can do cargo trading without the issues that we're having now. But the interesting thing I saw was the way they're going to run Jumptown 2 with the drugs. Instead of buying it from a kiosk, they're going to spawn the boxes in directly at the station on every server, and it's going to be at a rate of about one box every 30 seconds on every server. And you're going to have to pick it up and carry it to your ship.
Yeah, to increase the what do you call it? The risk.
The
Somebody
stress level.
somebody shooting you and taking the box.
Yeah. And that's going to be a very real case that somebody could be outside, shoot you, take your stuff, and run off with it. And I think that just adds a little bit more realism to it there, and also the fact that it adds a little bit more, like you said, risk to the fact that you're going to want people there covering you while you're doing these things. So, but at least they're looking forward to that, which was nice to see with the recap that they are, taking a lot of this to put into Jumptown 2. And the other thing that they did go over was the causes of the bugs with Xenothreat, and the belief that it was the Idris spawning was not happening because the Javelin was not on site before the first one was destroyed. They did take that out as a cause and found out that it had to do with the spawning radius of the subsequent Idrises. They thought by making an adjustment to that, it would alleviate the issues. Of course, we saw that it didn't. I think it worked for like a day, and then it just did the same thing. So that's where we were talking about. They're going to be doing some more analyzing to get to the root cause of that, which will be nice to see, because when it did run, it was most fun when it ran all the way through.
Agreed. And it's weird. I don't remember having that many issues when they ran it at the beginning of this year, like when they ran Xenothreat 1.0 or whatever.
Yeah, they did not. Typically, you got in and it was 30K issues were the big thing that kept you from being able to finish it, or crime stats. And of course, they addressed the crime stats in the recap as well, and the fact that they got some of those flushed out.
I felt like I got more this time around.
I would say I got less.
Yeah.
Because I would say there was really only 2 or 3 times that I got a crime stat for a friendly fire, where in the first go round of Xenothreat, I could guarantee I would get a crime stat every single one. I'd have to break off to go clear it to come back to be able to continue to get paid.
Well, I think that was one of the other things too. I think that they said in here about the crime stats, or maybe I just made it up in my head, or I need more coffee. But I thought that they were trying to figure out a way to sort that out because it's kind of like the call to arms. Like as soon as you get a crime stat, even if you didn't purposely intentionally commit a crime, um, you're automatically kicked out of that mission, and
Yep.
you got to go clear it before you can get back in, which sucks a lot.
Yeah, it does. And in the first wave of Xenothreat, everybody would just turn on you, immediately destroy you if you were red in the Xenothreat. This second time around, it seemed like a lot of people were much more mindful of the fact that, hey, you're a red target, but you may not. A lot of people judged it by your actions instead of just an immediate take you out. And I think the other thing we saw with the second go around, far less griefing and pirate activity, which it made it a little bit easier to get through the Xenothreat because we didn't have those people trying to keep everybody from finishing it. But I think that's probably a lot because they did it the first time and it's not fun for them anymore.
True.
And they're not getting anything from it.
I was just gonna say, I would say, despite that though, I think the NPCs were a little bit more aggressive this time around,
Oh,
from
yeah.
what I experienced.
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest problem I had with the NPCs, I like the additional aggression, but the constantly flickering in and out of, contact with them on the radar or within sight, even when you were pretty much within sight of the actual ship, had them targeted, it would drop out and drop back in. And that was the biggest issue I had with that, but it was usually easy to recover from that.
Yeah, well, I mean, because you're on someone, you're bearing down on them, and you've almost got them like they're right there. Another couple of shots and they're gone, and all of a sudden, target lock's gone, they're gone. You're like, where do they go?
Yep.
And they're behind you, or they're off to the right or left. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And talking about the pirate side of things with Xenothreat, with Ninetales, they brought it up that, and I have to admit that I really agree with this. They had a ratio of one pirate for every 20 people playing on the side of good for Ninetales. And that's interesting because when Xenothreat first came out, the big hoopla was they weren't being allowed to play the side of the Xenothreat. And then they
Yeah.
come out with the event that allows them to play the side of the illegal occupants and blockading people, and virtually no one turned out for it. And is that because it's not fun for them if it's condoned, or is it because Ninetales was just not a super great event? It's hard to say.
I I think based on some of the questions though, I think one of the challenges with Ninetales, at least from what I saw, was that it cycled through way too fast.
Yeah.
Um, it was there were no that I was aware of missions that you could sign up to do with Ninetales. Granted, there was something about you had to have the right amount of negative rep, I'll say,
Yes, you had to have crime stat and negative rep.
and but for me that one was the hardest thing to figure out. Even if I had wanted to play on the Ninetales side, just figuring out how to play on the quote unquote good guy side was difficult enough.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I mean, if they're going to do something like that, it'd be nice to, make that availability for people to play on the illegal side of thing to everybody. Make you make a moral choice. Do I want to play good? Do I want to play bad? No matter what your rep is. And
Yeah.
if they did that, maybe they'd have more participants on the other side of the fence, and which is very possible. Now, the interesting thing was they did mention that future iterations of Xenothreat, they are working out a way for people to play on the Xenothreat side.
Yep.
So that should be interesting to see how they handle that and how much the mission changes when you're allowed to split the population of the server to the two sides of an event that's proven itself as a great event to participate in. And of course, big question came up, are dynamic events necessary? That's a hell yes. And not so much for just the gameplay perspective of it. I mean, in my opinion, I think just the stress it puts on the server and the side that they can take things from it to apply towards future build outs and things like that. I don't think anything outside of these dynamic events has the ability to put the stress on the server that these do.
Yeah, and I think part of the question too was why are you doing it right now? Because of desync, lag, bugs, like the state of the verse is not conducive to having fun in these dynamic events, which I don't necessarily agree with because, like I said, Xenothreat was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but yeah, I think the answer was we need to collect data. Like now is the time to collect the data. Now is the time to cram this stuff in here so that we can see what's not working, what's working. So I think I think what we saw in the PTU from when it started to right when it got to what was it patch alpha
Mm-hmm.
something or other. We were in double letters. I definitely saw much greater stability, less desync and whatnot as they moved closer to releasing it to the PU. So I do think that these help a lot.
Oh yeah, they definitely do, and I definitely don't agree with the issues with the desync, the lag. Of course, we got that hot fix during Xenothreat to in PTU to help with the desync. I think that actually did help quite a bit. But the other thing is that the end goal, and one thing they talk about in the recap, the end goal is to be able to have multiple of these things going on at once. And they're talking about the difference between like your Xenothreat, which is a dynamic event. It's gonna come and go through patches. It'll be playable for a week or a couple weeks, and then it'll go away for a month, 2 months, 3 months, however often or what schedule they decide to do it. Then you have things like Ninetales, which they call an evergreen event. And the evergreen event is something that is going to be constantly available, running at all times, triggered down the right now everything is triggered manually, but eventually triggered down the line by the state of the server and what people are doing, what things people have done, and that will trigger the event. And it's something that's always going to be running and possible to launch at any time. And the possibility that you're going to have a Ninetales going on when a Xenothreat starts is very real, that down the line you'll see those two things running at the exact same time.
Yeah, there was that, and then there was also, are we going to see them in any other part of the verse other than just in one small corner?
Yep, with the and that's Jumptown too. Obviously, we're gonna see that go into the FPS side, and they did talk about future FPS and non-space based missions and
Yeah,
events that will be going on, which I think is great because obviously you want a variety so that it doesn't seem like you're just cutting and pasting the same event and changing the backstory to it.
yeah, and part of the ground-based stuff, the planet side, moon side stuff, is waiting on the planetary navigation
Yeah,
work to complete.
yeah. I mean,
But
we got compasses in our HUDs now and stuff like that, but you still have no way driving an Ursa, a Cyclone, or anything like that to really see where you're going or change your direction to reach a certain point. If you're escaping Klesher, you really have no way to tell which way to get to Barton Flats to get to a pad where you can get a ship because you can't use your star map on surface.
yeah, and the other side is if it's going to be PVE, there's no way to get uh, for NPCs to navigate either.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we know that they have a hard enough time just walking through a station
or sitting in a chair.
or not phasing through each other and becoming a Siamese twin.
Or triplet.
They have a lot of issues. So, other things that they did talk about was Ninetales. It will be coming back. It may not come back during 314. It is slated to reappear in 315 at the latest. As to what changes that they're going to make in that, I don't know. I know that they obviously are re-implementing those mods we talked about for the buying and selling to help make that an easier and more smooth transition into that. But other changes that they may or may not make, we'll have to wait and see. I know one thing they said is that in their mind, it didn't really feel like a real blockade. And this is one where I kind of wonder what they're going to do to fix it. The problem that they felt that it didn't feel like a blockade, of course, is when you would approach the CRUL-1 or whatever station was under blockade, there was nothing there to deter you. You just flew right on in. And they said the problem was that it and it's not a short-term fix, they said, but they said the spawn time for NPCs was too long that by the time they could get an NPC to spawn in, the player was already gone and landed. So they having somebody there to attack you and try to keep you from reaching the station, that all fell on anybody that was available to play the other side. Other than that, you were just getting a free pass to get back to the station. So I agree, it did not feel like a blockade. I was expecting to come out and do a firefight, and my first time running it, it's like, okay, well, where is everybody? Where's the challenge?
And I think part of that's because they didn't anticipate that most of us, once we dropped out of Quantum, we were all max burning at the station because we were expecting to find resistance. And I think they weren't ready with the calculations to spawn ahead of us so that there was the appearance of a patrol or a blockade. So they were spawning behind you, and then they just couldn't catch up. So if they
Yeah.
did spawn, they were too far to catch up to you.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if they can fix that. I mean, I would think that if you are already, and one thing they talked about was communications and broadcasting the message, and that in a lot of cases there wasn't enough time for people to get on and play when they started broadcasting. They're talking about doing a lot more broadcasting of the event outside of the verse through, Spectrum or the website and things like that to allow people to get on and get in place before it starts.
So messaging outside of the verse, I just realized there's no mobile app for the Spectrum communication stuff.
No, there is not.
Well, I mean, because they could send alerts that way.
Absolutely. And I think the Destiny 2 app I had, it had a lot of communication information through there that was interesting. So, it'd be nice to see if they did come up with an app or something from Spectrum that could help with that. Of course, now we're just adding more stuff on them for them to develop that will prolong everything, and that will become a perfectionist nightmare that, hey, log into our app and you can fly your ship while on the go. Yeah, let's not give them that idea.
Well, I'll say though that I don't know if I use an Apple phone, so going to the RSI website, and I think Spectrum works okay, but just a lot of the stuff like the Pledge Store and different things like that does not work well in the mobile format.
Yeah,
So
I
I think
have an Android and I can get to it. It does not work well at all.
yeah, so I think a mobile app would help.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much, if I go to the RSI site on my phone, it's usually just to check out a post from Spectrum or something, lightweight like that
Yeah,
instead of the more heavy duty stuff.
yeah, agreed.
So, and one big thing that actually came out of the recap is possible future one and done events. And these are going to be, from what their description was, it runs once. That's the only time it's going to run. It'll never run again. Get in, get your money out of it, and be done with it and move on. So they are looking at possibility of events like that would just be one shot and over, but would be good money makers for people to reap a large amount of wealth out of them by participating in them.
Or get that one cool thing, like armor that actually has different stats than all the rest of the armor.
Yeah. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what they come up with that as far as how long it runs, from start to end, how long that time frame is, and what kind of different actions that they'll have as part of that. And that was pretty much the recap. So I mean, a lot of great information for sure.
I'd say one other thing that I caught in there, it was kind of real quick, but somebody asked if there were plans for non-combat profession-centered dynamic events,
Oh yeah, that's right. They
like
did ask
like
that.
mining, refining, or something like that. And the answer was basically, ideally yes, but they're nowhere near ready for that. That's something that's a long ways off.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, having Ed Blood, I think one thing during that conversation they mentioned is that they do want events that are going to cover every aspect of the verse
Yep.
and every corner of the verse, that not just gear them all around that combat, like you said. Which, I mean,
I think
could that mean a large, you got to go out with a mining crew and find a mass amount of quantanium to save a station or something like that? Very possibly along those lines. But I think even with those non-combat ones, you're going to find that people are going to come into them with the anticipation that they're going to create the combat.
Yeah, but with like homesteads and outposts coming as well, you could run across an outpost that needs supplies, or there's a illness running through there. You've got to get, medical supplies to help heal, or you can heal.
Yep. Or you can suicide and lose all your crap.
True.
Which brings us into the Inside Star Citizen. Again, this week was all about healing. And why don't you take this one, J Scale, and we'll go over this because it's got a lot of interesting stuff.
Okay, so where to start with all of this stuff? My notes kind of run similar. Oh, whatever. So they started out with they want us to actually start fearing death. We need to start making better risk-based decisions. If you're going to step into that firefight, you better be thinking about what's on you, what you're going to lose, etc., because you could potentially go down and leave a lootable corpse. So first step of death of a space person. This is really the first iteration of realizing what's his name, Chris Roberts. I'm gonna call him Roberts Chris. Coffee. His first step in recognizing kind of his vision of us being kind of the intrepid explorers, kind of wandering around the unknown and exploring the unknown. You've got a plan. Well, basically we're pioneers. 90, they said 99% of the time that we die right now in the PU, that'll result in a down state instead of immediate death. And then they walk through a little bit of the incapacitated. They call it incapacitation. There's a timer that goes with it. The timer will be determined. The amount of time will be determined about the amount of damage you take. So if it's just a shot, like a gunshot, it may give you like an hour or a half hour before you actually expire. But if you get hit by a Carrack, you may only have 15 minutes. You have an option of waiting and hoping somebody will come along and help you, or you can immediately regenerate. It's no longer called dying. You can force it by, I assume, hitting a button. I think in one of the screenshots I saw it was holding spacebar.
Yeah.
That'll launch you back to the pickle jar where they can decant a clone. But when you do die, like I already said, you leave behind a corpse, and so that's whatever's on you. Your armor, your subscriber flare, your favorite FS9, whatever it is. It's all going to be sitting there on the ground for somebody to come along and pick over your corpse.
Yeah, and actually, you and I were talking about that before starting the episode. Was the subscriber flare, the concierge stuff, people's monocles and top hats, and golden guns, and how that's going to be affected by it.
Or your neon orange or neon green. Was it Aztec or was it Volt? I forget which one of them.
The
pistol on the
Aztec.
But so incapacitated, then death, as opposed to just immediately dying. But when you are resuscitated, and that you're resuscitated by somebody applying some sort of healing to you, you're not going to come back 100%. You're going to have some sort of injury, and it'll range from slight to severe. A slight injury may not really show much impedance to how your character performs in the game. But then obviously it graduates up and it becomes more of a hindrance for severe.
Yeah, they're talking minor injuries being things like head injuries, concussions, and things like that, or twisted ankle, things that will slow you down but not completely make you immobile. And in the video, you can see as they progress with like the video of the guy walking each step as it gets worse and worse.
Oh yeah, I nerded out on this one. I went and I got a whole bunch of stuff on that. It's like their injury system. Each body part is in the game, but not each body part as in every body part, but your major pieces: your head, your chest, your arms, your legs. Head injuries will affect your vision. They called it blood vision,
Yep.
which is detachment of your cornea or retina. The force reactions are going to affect you more the worse the head injury is. So
Oh
that's
yeah,
where they
with
were
the
talking.
wind and everything.
Yeah, a slight breeze may knock you off your feet if you're severely injured. For chest injuries, it's going to reduce your stamina. You're going to be in a weakened state, and it'll trigger a hurt locomotion. So you're not as mobile. So your dude actually looks like he's walking around hurt, or your
Mm-hmm.
gal, whatever. And then arms, you're going to have weapon sway. You're going to have difficulty carrying objects. If you have a broken limb, like a broken arm, you won't be able to climb a ladder. Um, you'll only be able to shoot your weapon once.
Yep.
After that, I didn't understand what he said. He said you'll go into a horror, and I don't like
Well,
a
they called
limping
it
state.
the one shot actions, which means that what I took from it was the one shot actions are going to be things where you can just gather enough strength where you can get one shot off, but then you go back to an injured state because it just took too much out of you.
Yeah. Okay.
It's going to be that boost of adrenaline to just maybe try to save yourself, and then you go into a slightly worse state until you kind of recoup a little bit.
Yeah. And then legs, obviously you'll limp. My favorite part was if you get a broken leg, they prone lock you, so you are
Mm-hmm.
crawling around on your belly. And I think Richard said you don't want this to happen when you're down in a cave.
Yeah, no, because you're not going to get out. So, and
You're
I
done.
I think one thing that I found interesting was they talked about the fact that people can come along and heal you, or you could use your med pens and all that, and the med pens will still be in game, as well as they're introducing 5 additional drugs, I believe, that
Yep.
will heal different type of ailments. So you're gonna have to be selective in which pens you have and which ones you use for what injury. But it's not going to heal you like it does today, where it's just one shot, 100%, you're good to go. Like you said earlier, it's going to get you to a better state, but not to any state where you can continue. You still want to get to a hospital or something like that to get completely healed up. But you can overdose.
Yeah. So there were a couple of things with that I thought were interesting. So they mentioned med pens will still be in the game. They just won't heal as much. But then when they go into talking about the new drugs, they say the new drugs are intended to mask symptoms as opposed to heal you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the level and the duration of masking, I won't call it healing because you still have the injury that needs to be taken care of, will be based on the actual drug dosage amount and the method of application, they said. So,
I think
in
what they said was that a lot of it is still all alcohol based. It'll be a limited effect, and like you said, it's like a painkiller. You won't be held back by the pain threshold, but it's only going to be for a limited time. But if you take too many, the alcohol will actually put you into a drunken state,
yeah,
and you'll be walking around like you're drunk.
and I think the penalty is going to be, based on what they were saying, is so. I paused the screen where they were showing some of the new drugs. So there's the Adrenapen,
Mm-hmm.
which is for muscle fatigue and concussions or concussed injuries. The Corticopen, which is muscle weakness, respiratory damage. Detox pen, or reduce high blood drug levels, overdose. And then the opio pen, they didn't show what it said, but obviously I assume that's for broken
Pain.
limbs
Yeah,
since it wasn't
painkiller.
listed in here, right? To get you back up if you're on broken limbs. The methods of administering the drugs was the pens, the multi-tool attachment for the Grey Crap multi-tool, the Cure Life gun, and then med beds. But med beds are going to heal you unless you're in like a tier 3 bed and you've got
Which
a
is your Cuddy Red, and that's
yeah,
just gonna be like a supersized med pen. It's gonna put you in a better state, but not heal you unless it's a minor injury like a concussion.
exactly. And so what I think though is the pens. I mean, and this makes sense, right? The pens are going to be they're going to give you a small dose and work for a short amount of time, but they're going to stay your blood. They're going to drive your blood drug level up the fastest.
Yep.
So my assumption is if you try to go lone wolf and you go out there and you get an injury and it's a long walk back to your ship, you're going to have to keep jabbing yourself with as many pens as you've got on you, which is going to drive your BDL up, and then give you other problems,
Yeah.
because that was another state that they talked about. Once you get into that, once your blood drug level goes up, it starts to affect your vision. Audio effects become muffled. You start to enter a drunk locomotion state,
Mm-hmm.
and then if you hit 100% BDL, you're in an overdose state, which is like incapacitation, but there's not a timer to death unless you're also injured, is what I took away from that.
Yeah, and if the injury is not too severe, you can actually recover from that. It's just you're going to be a limp body on the floor until you do.
Yeah, they said your BDL will decrease over time. Thank God you have a liver. But it wasn't. Yeah, they didn't go into specifics about the time that it'll take for the drugs to kind of wear
Wear
out, and
off.
then, well, it's funny. I think the effects are going to wear off faster than the actual blood drug level.
Yeah.
So just to be that extra penalty for you for gameplay, I'm just wondering how bad it's going to be.
It'll be
Uh,
interesting. I will admit, I foresee at least at some point probably me doing a video to see how many shots I can give myself before I reach that level, just as a test.
oh yeah, we've got to,
Oh yeah, I mean,
definitely in the PTU.
and we'll have to go to Wally's bar, get drunk, and see if that detox pen works at worth its money in gold or not. So
Yes, that'd be
it'll
awesome.
it'll definitely be interesting to see how many drunken people we see walking around throughout the verse that are messing around with that. And of course, the oh, you were going to say something?
No, the thing I was going to say about so, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but one of the things I scan different forums on Spectrum just every once in a while just to see what's out there. A lot of it's not worth reading, but there is, I'll say, some fear mongering going on with medical gameplay, in that people are fearful that it's going to trigger a new, uh, more trolls, right? To pad ram you or whatever, just to kill you, because more giggles, but it's also going to kill them. So I don't think
Yeah.
that's going to happen. What I'm wondering is, are they going to set it up so that you can't, quote unquote, heal someone if they don't have an injury? So I can't walk up behind you while we're waiting for people to show up and just sit there and just keep jabbing you with an opioid pen,
I
if you're
would.
100% healthy.
Well, I mean, we see a lot of games out there with the ability to revive or restore somebody, whether it be, Rainbow Six, whatever. There's a lot of different games that have that function, and the injured state has to be triggered before the healing can be triggered. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a very much similar format that if you walk up to somebody and they're not injured, it's not going to allow you to activate that pen or the Cure Life tool or the Grey Cat multi tool. And it just won't be an available option unless that person is in that state.
Which I hope they do, because I have visions of being at the ASOPs and somebody walking up behind you and, nailing you a couple times with a Cure Life gun, and putting you in an overdose state.
Well, I think two things on that. One, you'll see in Armistice Zones that's not even going to be an option, much like anything else in Armistice Zone, because you can't pull your gray cat multi tool out in an Armistice Zone. But eventually, those will be going away. But the other thing is that I found interesting is that it's up to you if you're healing your buddy to use the right drug. So if they've got broken limbs and you use the detox, it's going to allow you to use the detox, and it's not the right cure for the ailment,
Yep.
and it will negatively affect them.
Yep.
So you could kill your friend trying to save him.
Friend. Will you be friends?
I just see this now on the stream, me laying on the ground with broken legs, and the 10 Amarok Fangs member all standing above me with Grey Cat tools, and they all shoot me up with the wrong drug.
Yep. I can see that. Just for the giggles.
Oh yeah, of course.
So blood drug levels. We talked about that. The drugs are going to be there to mask injuries, not cure them. So to cure an injury, you're going to have to go to a medical facility or a med bed. They said.
Yep.
We touched on this already. The Cuddy Red, those beds are going to be tier 3. Tier 3 being the lowest, tier 2, then tier 1 being the absolute bee's knees of beds. Tier 3 is going to cure minor injuries, like we've already talked about. The Carrick and the 890 jump and rest stop clinics are going to be tier 2,
And
which will go ahead.
At first, that really surprised me at first, but now I think about it, and since I watched that, I thought about it. It's like, no, it actually does make sense because at first I was assuming that the Lagrange Station med clinics were going to end up being like the hospitals, that they're going to be spawn points, they're going to be full recovery and all that, and the fact that it's not really surprised me at first, but then I thought about it, it's kind of like you go to a minute clinic at your local CVS or whatever. They're not going to fix a broken leg. They're going to send you to the hospital.
But I'll say I had the same reaction because Jared has said, at least in one or two previous videos, that the clinics are going to be the same functionality as the hospitals. Some kind of language that's close to that.
Yep.
So I had the same expectation. Um, I, you're going to be able to respawn on the Carrick, the 890, and at the clinics, which I'm glad to see. I wish we could still, at least for this first iteration of healing, have the tier 3 med bed only cure minor injuries. That's fine, but it would be nice to be able to still use it for org events and whatnot as a respawn point, just because it's right there. Like,
Yeah.
you've got 2 beds, people can alternate where they, where they set their spawn. You pop out the back. It's not a long commute from the med bed to, getting back outside.
Yeah.
Whereas the Carrick and the 890, you gotta walk a fair bit to get back outside if whatever you're doing is outside.
Oh
So
yeah, I mean they're much bigger ships, and I mean in all regards they're a little tougher to get on site and maintain on site than something small like the Cuddy.
yeah, and that's the other thing, right? So
Yeah.
we'll get there. Maybe one of those vehicles they're working on is an ambulance, and we'll be able to bring an ambulance, in the Carrick or the 890's garage there,
Yeah.
and then we can just transport wounded back.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility, and I think they're really looking at the Cuddy to fill that ambulance role right
Yeah,
now.
till the Apollo comes.
Yeah, oh, the 2 Apollos.
Yep. Hospitals, they're going to be the tier 1s. They're going to be the everything. Fix you up like brand new. You're gonna. This is one of the conflicting things that I've seen and heard. So they've talked about, if you take too much damage to, like, if you repeatedly break your arm, eventually that arm is going to become. But the way they talked in this video, and maybe it's just where we are with the technology, it's gonna. They made it sound like the bed's gonna basically create you, heal you perfectly. You're gonna be like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
So maybe the tech just isn't there yet for that gameplay to come in. But that was one of the open questions I had: is that in this, or is that coming?
I think you're
'Cause
going to see that coming because obviously we talked about cybernetics last week or the week before that. And if you have a continually deteriorating arm because you break it over and over again, eventually it's going to be unusable. And they don't have that tool in game to give you that replacement to put you back at 100%. So
yeah,
my impression is that we'll see that shift as the cybernetics come in.
well, I mean, one way to fix that right now without the cybernetics is you just, you take a ride through the pickle jar and you become a clone.
Very true.
Um,
And talking about pickle jars in the hospitals, the way it's going to run is, and I think we're going to see this with 315, when you log in, and my understanding was this is going to be with 315.
yeah,
When you log in, you're going to, just like you do now, you're going to select your spawn point after your character creation, and that is what they're going to call your home location. So you're going to have to be a lot more selective about where you're picking in 315 for your initial launch point, because that is going to be your home location, most likely until the next patch. And if you die or if you get killed or your ship blows up, then that is where you're going to go back to. And if there is no hospital, like Lorville, there's not a hospital right now. So if you pick Lorville, you're actually going to probably spawn on Everest.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like if you choose Area 18, it would be by Genie, and if you chose Lorville, it would be
Everest.
Everest.
But it will be your home location.
Well, I was gonna say the other thing is um, that made me think about still on the release view, and I'm hoping it's coming. Is the the Hanger Manager app and persistent hangers.
Yeah.
And if we're choosing now our home residence or a regeneration point, whatever they're calling it, that opens the door to more things are going to come, right? When you choose, Lorville as your home location or your residence, that's where your persistent hat will be. That's where your persistent
Yep.
hanger, your defaults, all that stuff will be. So I think there's more coming on that front. I just
Yeah,
don't
and
know where it is.
I would imagine they'll have that in next week's Inside Star Citizen when they talk about the personal inventory and all that, because that all leads into the personal hangers and all that. And yeah, I would imagine, just like you said, I mean, you pick your home base, and that's going to set it for all these major changes coming.
Well, and the other thing is, if you're flying around the example they use, if you're flying around your Carrack and you set your spawn to your Carrack's medbed, and the Carrack gets blown up with you in it and you die, you'll respawn at your chosen regen point. So if you choose Lorville, Everest Harbor, or if you choose New Babbage, it'll be whatever Brentworth. What's the
Yep.
hospital there?
I don't even know what they called it. Oh, Maria. Lorville's the Saint Maria.
Yeah, you'll respawn in the hospital. So
Yep.
um, fun times.
Oh yeah, I see a lot of people making a lot longer trips to get back on site than and what they may have had to do before. But it'll be interesting. I'm going to have a huge learning curve on this because this is going to be a major change for me.
That and the coming so lootable corpses. They talked about leaving a lootable corpse, but they stopped and just said more's coming on the next ISC when they talk about localized inventory.
Yeah.
So between both this and the inventory changes, I think 315 is going to be. There's a lot of change that people are going to have to start figuring out.
Oh yeah, I mean 314 was a huge patch, and I think that 315 is turning into a bigger patch than even what 314 was. And with that lootable corpse, we mentioned it before and everything. You're gonna, I mean, you lose guns and ammo now if you die, but if you're carrying 10 FS9s with you and you die, you only lose the one you're holding. If
Yeah,
you're, and with personal inventory, obviously nobody can carry 10 FS9s, but it's gonna, if I remember correctly, they talked about the ability to go back and get your stuff off your body,
yeah,
but you know, and again, in regards to the concierge and the sub stuff, and you mentioned when we were talking earlier about, and I remember after you mentioned it that in the PU QA thing that we're talking about for EUPU. They were talking about the fact that the possibility of a concierge or sub flare or store to get those specific items back, and it'll be interesting to see how they flesh that out to get those actual pledge items back.
yeah. I'm wondering. I expect that they're going to address it in the next ISC because it will
That'll
be a
be
point of
big.
contention. Yeah.
I mean, especially if you tell people that got concierge flare and all that stuff, hey, here you get all this free stuff. You lost it. Oh, here, give us 8,000 AUEC to get it back. You're gonna have some angry people, I think.
Oh, definitely.
So, but as far as the death, the nice thing is, like we talked about, you're gonna have the ability for people to come back and revive you. The time lengths, and you see time lengths in other games, it's like 45 seconds to a minute or 2 minutes. They were talking about time lengths of
Yeah.
minor, not minor, but different levels of anything from 30 minutes to over an hour, hour and a half.
Yeah.
That you're going to have the ability to, in that incapacitative state, to get somebody out to you to save you.
Yep.
But there's a downfall to that because they also talked about, let's say you shoot me and I'm incapacitated. I'm not dead yet. if you want, you can come over and put another round in me to finish it off and just outright kill me, or an NPC can, or anything like that. Or
Yep.
you can walk away and just leave me incapacitated and have a chance to be revived by somebody in the party.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're going to be able to finish people off and have that ability to just stand over top of them and pop a round off in their head to, end it all for them.
Yeah. And for the length of time the corpse sticks around, obviously until a 30k or something happens. But eventually, when in a previous video, I can't remember which one it was, but a long time ago, I think the vision was that if you're exploring some moon out there where there isn't anybody else and you fall off a cliff and die, your corpse, everything's supposed to stay there until you know fly back, and you'll still be able to loot it if you can get back there.
Oh yeah, if you can get back there, no one finds it before. I think what this is going to lead to, because obviously orgs are going to be a little better off on this one, because if you're in an org, you reach out to your org, hey, I'm at
Yep.
this location, come revive me. The solo player, their only recourse is going to be the in-game chat, which can be a double-edged sword, as we all know. We're going to be seeing a lot of people asking, hey, I'm incapacitated, can somebody come revive me? And one of two things is going to happen. Well, more like one of three things. Nobody's going to respond. Somebody will be nice enough to respond and go revive them. Or somebody's going to use it for the fact that, hey, I can go finish them off, take their stuff, and
Yep.
get an easy lootable corpse here.
Yep.
And I think solo players are going to see a pretty large effect from this, where the org players are not going to be as heavily affected.
Well, no, because especially when we're doing org stuff, there's a bunch of us around, right? I mean, you can pair up, and you can, if you're not doing something for the org, you're just doing something for yourself. There's a better chance that you can pair up with somebody because you're in an org, right? There's
Yeah.
more people around. I think one of the other things, though, that was it the other night you were talking that you brought up around another way of pirating, right? I think you're going to be able to spawn missions, a heal mission or a resuscitation mission.
Mm-hmm.
So, three of us could be standing there. One of us is the guinea pig to be shot or whatever. We go down, it triggers a rescue mission or a resuscitation mission, whatever. And then whoever shows up, whether their intentions are good or bad, the healthy characters that are standing around can take out, whoever that person is and steal their ship and steal their stuff and all that stuff.
Yeah, that wasn't me that brought that up, but that is a great point.
Maybe it was Yeti.
Yeah, it could have been Yeti. I think that's gonna introduce a lot of things like that where, and granted, I mean, using traps and all that is a form of pirating, so I can't say that it shouldn't be allowable gameplay or anything like that, because you use your resources when you're pirating, and I would say that definitely is not so much the griefing side of things, but just the basic pirating part. But
No,
yeah, people are going to use it for that.
that to me is actual pirating.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff that we see that's labeled pirating is not.
Yeah. I think the one thing definitely it's going to provide a way for the people that want to play the pirate side of things. They're going to gain benefits from it by lootable corpses, gear that they can take off of people. But with the loot crates and all that we're seeing come in, they're going to be able to take that stuff and sell it, just like you can when you find the loot boxes.
Yeah, and that's in this patch, right?
Yep.
This is in 3.15.
Yeah, looting tier 0 is coming in with the loot boxes and all that.
Excellent.
So definitely, I am fearful of the healing gameplay, and I'm excited about it at the same time. Because I know that I'm going to lose a lot of crap. Whether it be through when I'm on solo or in the org, I'm going to die a lot.
Well, as we were speaking earlier, like, this is like the first iteration of it, so we need to test it. We need to mess around, see how many times you can jab yourself with a pen before you're overdosed.
Oh, that's the first thing I'm doing.
Well, and see, test out the different drugs as well. Like, how well do they get you back on your feet? Like, will they opioid pen? In my speculation that it's for broken limbs, will it get you out of prone lock and onto your feet with a limp, or I mean, I'm interested. This one I feel like is one of the well, it's the most significant change to the game that I've witnessed since I've been playing. So
Yeah, I would say. I mean, and on top of that, it's one of the most largest base changes that they're making, but they're making two of them at the same time with the whole inventory rework as well too.
yep,
And I think that's going to be interesting to see, but also it'll be interesting to see how well they have it fleshed out before pushing it to live and how many bugs we're going to see with it.
yeah,
Because neither one of these are minor on their own,
nope,
and you're doing two of them at the same time, which is, I can't recall a time when they pushed out two large changes like this at the same time.
no. This is pretty big.
Oh yeah. So, but that is everything with the dealing and healing. Hopefully, everybody had a chance to check out the video. It's definitely very interesting. It's probably one of the shorter time periods that I've seen them use Richard Tryer's audio. But definitely very, very interesting and very informative, especially with anybody that has a fear of what's going to come with this. And this is, like we've mentioned, one of the first steps of Death of the Spaceman. We're not at the point yet where death is going to eventually lead to your character being gone and having to create a heir or a next of kin. But this is in that roadway to get there. So it'll be fun to try it out and check it out. So after that, I mean, with the lack of Star Citizen Live this week, there really wasn't much else that they put out. Did you have anything else that you had?
Just for the lore nerds, there was a lore makers community Q&A. Yeah, I'm not going to go through all of it. There were some things here and there that if you're interested in lore, go check it out. But I personally, I'm not super interested in the UE military rank structure. It doesn't really have any bearing on my gameplay, so I don't really care. Um, the proper pronunciation for Orison, apparently you can say Orison or Orizon, uh, and it means a prayer. But whatever. There's stuff like that in there. If that's your if that's your thing. Apparently, I learned from reading through some of the Q&A that the UE has a Fair Chance Act, which, if you're a Star Trek fan, is I guess similar to the Prime Directive. Basically, no messing around with a planet or a moon if it has sentient life. There was some interesting stuff about aliens, the different alien species that we know about: the Banu, the Tabaran, the Xeon, and the Vandul. The Vandul can survive in a vacuum for a little while. The rest is they basically redacted when they were, which I find kind of annoying. Just don't put it in there, right? Don't put it in there and redact it. Um, I'm just trying to think. Stegman's lore. Somebody asked a question about Stegman's lore. I didn't know that people were that interested in a clothing manufacturer's history, but apparently somebody is. There was a question around terraforming, which I thought was a little interesting. Why didn't they terraform Venus? Because Venus, according to modern day, our scientists in real life, is a better candidate for terraforming than Mars would be for some reason. Not sure. But the answer basically was that the technology, even though we're this far into the future, the technology to terraform isn't sophisticated enough to handle smoggy planets like Venus. And then there was another question around in-depth military fleet battle records. They said they haven't put any of that stuff in, and it didn't seem like they were rushing to do that either. And then one other interesting thing for me was the lack of AI. So they created lore reasons why there is no AI in the game, or why there's laws against having artificial intelligence run our ships. But then the non-lore reasons were that Chris Roberts didn't want AI to be a central gameplay feature. He wants players to do the heavy lifting, basically, and not rely on our computers. So
Yeah,
that
I
makes me
can
worried
agree with
for.
that though.
Well, it makes me a little worried for computer blades. Like, how much are we going to be able to do with computer blades? Because a lot of people are looking forward to taking some of these larger ships, throwing blades in there to automate some of the turrets, and then be able to operate not as efficiently as if it was crewed, but at least operate it more efficiently than if they didn't have any, like a Carrack, being
Right.
able to automate some of the turrets on the Carrack would be nice if you're flying it by yourself, or even if you're just flying it with one other person. Stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think with the blades, I think from my understanding of them, yeah, you can put the blade in that turret and all that, but I think either it's going to probably work on it targets whatever you target, you set and select and designate the target, and then they will focus on that as long as it's within their visible range. I would imagine going somewhere that route. I don't think they're putting it in there for it to act freely and on its own. It's gonna be slave to you.
Yeah, I was wondering if it would either slave to the pilot or whether it would be a point defense, like be a point defense mode.
I think it would depend on the ship. I mean, obviously we have ships like the Carrack you can't necessarily firing guns from the pilot seat, but would you be able to select and designate a target and then all your blades take up? Or are you going to be required to have at least one gunner in a multi-crew ship that it can slave to?
True.
And if that's the case, are they going to make it available for the dual seat fighters that have a turret that can't be pilot controlled, where you can put a blade in that turret like the Hurricane, and will it just slave right to the pilot who does have gun control?
Yeah. This wasn't in any of the stuff this week. This is something I found this week. Speaking of blades and components and whatnot, I found a shipyard post on Robert's space industry website from 2017 that talked about components. I did not realize that grade A and B, the top two tiers of components, were going to have upgrade slots.
I haven't seen anything on that.
I'll forward you the link to it. It's from 2017, so and I couldn't find anything else beyond that date. I couldn't find any ISC videos or anything like that had more information on it. But I saw something recently where it looked like they were messing with components and there were parts on the component, and I'm wondering if those are those upgrade slots. But basically, the gist of it was it basically breaks down civilian the different levels, industrial and what was it, stealth, and then there's competition. But then there's the A, B, C, D, I guess, tiers within each one of those areas.
Yep.
And obviously A is your top performer, and then D is your low performer, and most ships come with like civilian grade C stuff.
Yeah.
But in that thing that they were talking about, and then they also had examples of what those subcomponents would do inside the component, like make it more efficient, give it higher output, like a shield it would reduce certain types of damage. So they're modifiers, they're buffs basically.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was something we were talking about the blades, and it just popped in my head. So I'll forward you the article.
Yeah, and definitely interesting on that whole similarity to the Star Trek Prime Directive, because we know how well that worked for Star Trek. I don't think they really ever followed that rule. I think Picard did once, and that was about it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I have a feeling it's going to work just as well for us.
Yeah.
But other than that, that's pretty much the news for the week. And hopefully everybody found it interesting. Check out that healing and dealing information on the Inside Star Citizen. And definitely feel free to hit us up on any of the links from the Twitter account, the Instagram, or even on the YouTube with any questions that you have. Be happy to answer them. And hopefully everybody enjoyed this episode. I want to thank Jay Skell, as always, for all his work that went into preparing this. And keep an eye out, as future episodes will cover the inventory changes next week that come out, as well as once CitizenCon comes around, we'll be covering that as well. And other than that, just want to thank everybody for watching. Don't forget to check out our streams every Wednesday and Sunday night at 7 p.m. for actual gameplay. And anything that you had left there, Jay Skell?
No, that covers it.
All right, well, that's it for this week. And everybody be good out there. Enjoy the verse. And we will catch you next time.